Hey folks, this is Rhykker. About a week ago, there were some major stories coming out about some Blizzard employees. Some former Blizzard employees, some of which had left Blizzard very recently, were coming together to form a new game studio, Bonfire Studios, and another big headline was just shortly after this, Chris Metzen, and if you know the name, you know the name. Chris Metzen has officially retired from Blizzard. Now, initial speculation was that Metzen would be joining up this new company, Bonfire Studios. So we're going to talk about all this, and in doing so, I wanted to also do a little bit of research into other companies that have been formed from past Blizzard employees. Real quick, before we get started, for those of you coming around for a Sombra update, there's nothing to update you on yet. There's basically been nothing now since the last video I posted, but rest assured that once there is some Sombra news, I will be covering it. There are some really big names that have left Blizzard in the past, that have come together to form some game studios that had, from the community, a lot of expectations, big expectations as to what these guys would produce. We're talking about some of the guys who basically made Diablo 2. We're talking about some other major employees who pioneered World of Warcraft. So I did some research and found there were actually a lot more companies started from former Blizzard employees than I initially anticipated. So we're going to go over all those, talk about who left, what companies they formed, what games these companies made, and whether these companies were successful. Some of the results I found to be actually quite surprising. Alright, so on to the history of Blizzard and the companies that have spawned from its former employees. Our story begins in 1991, when Mike Morhaime, Frank Pierce, and Alan Adam come together to form a company called Silicon and Synapse. Now, Silicon and Synapse started off as a company that mostly made ports of games for different systems, specifically Super Nintendo. But they did start to produce some original games of their own, most notably RPM Racing in 91, The Lost Vikings in 92, and at this point I think you might know who I'm talking about, if you didn't already, and 1993 Rock and Roll Racing. Now, apart from the three founding members that we've listed, also joining Silicon and Synapse in 1991 was Patrick Wyatt, a man who would go on to become a senior programmer at Blizzard and the vice president of research and development. But more on him later. In 1993, three individuals came together to form a game studio called Condor Games. Those three are brothers Max Schaefer and Eric Schaefer, as well as David Brevik. This company also worked on ports of games for various consoles, and in 94 released a port for the Game Boy of NFL Quarterback Club. Now, some of you know your history, but others are saying, Rhykker, why the hell are you talking about Condor Games and Silicon and Synapse? I've never heard of these companies before. What's the deal? Well, it turns out that 1994 was the year that Silicon and Synapse renamed itself to Chaos Studios. Until they realized the name Chaos Studios was already taken, so they renamed themselves to Blizzard Entertainment. It was in that year that Blizzard released Warcraft, the first Warcraft that started off the entire Warcraft franchise. And we'll just conveniently forget that it was totally ripped off Warhammer. 1994 also saw three important figures join Blizzard Entertainment. We have Bill Roper, who would go on to serve in senior production and design capacities on the Diablo, StarCraft, and Warcraft series. We have Nick Carpenter, who would go on to become the vice president of art and cinematic development at Blizzard. And we have the man, the legend, Chris Metzen, who would go on to become the senior vice president of story and franchise development.
I am Thrall.
But Condor also picked up some key personnel in 1994. Two individuals that will become instrumental to the Diablo series. We have Michio Okamura, who would go on to become the lead artist for Diablo, who is largely credited for the look of Diablo himself. And we have Matt Ullman, who was the composer and sound designer for the Diablo series, and is responsible for this. That iconic sound, as well as all the music and sound from the original Diablo game, the second Diablo game, and a huge part of the rest of the series, was either directly made or heavily influenced by Matt's direction. These two individuals right here are arguably the heart and soul of the look and sound of the Diablo franchise. Now, it was in 1995 that these two companies, Condor and Blizzard, first met. They were both working on ports for the game Justice League Task Force, Blizzard for the SNES, and Condor for the handheld version. It was that year that Blizzard contracted Condor Games to get to work on making Diablo. Also that year, Eric Sexton joined Blizzard North and would become a game designer on Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. 9 months before the release of Diablo, Blizzard outright bought Condor Games and renamed them Blizzard North. The entities existed as two separate design studios, but Blizzard North was now owned by Blizzard, just existing in a satellite office. Diablo obviously was a huge hit, and Blizzard North was put to work making Diablo 2. In '96, Ben Haas joined Blizzard North, and he served as a lead animator, a modeler, and worked on special effects for the original Diablo game. On the Blizzard side of things, it was in 1996 that the expansion for Warcraft 2 released. You would have seen the original Warcraft 2 on my timeline, but unfortunately my timeline only has room for one game per year. But apart from that release, we also had two key people join Blizzard that year. Jeff Strain, who would go on to become the lead programmer of World of Warcraft, and Mike O'Brien also joined Blizzard in 1996.
This figure just an estimate based on the information at hand.
And would end up becoming a lead programmer at Blizzard Entertainment, where he led the development of BattleNet, Blizzard's multiplayer client, and he also developed the 3D rendering engine for Warcraft 3. That was Blizzard's first 3D game. In 1997, Blizzard releases The Lost Vikings 2, but no one ever talks about that. This is also the year that Rob Pardo joined Blizzard. He would go on to become the Chief Creative Officer. Mark Kern also joined. He would go on to become a team lead on World of Warcraft. And William Petrus joined, who would become the World of Warcraft art director. In 1998, StarCraft is released and Kevin Beardsley joins Blizzard. He would go on to be a lead animator and technical artist for World of Warcraft. As you're starting to see, folks, the people who would go on to work on World of Warcraft started joining Blizzard well before that game or even Warcraft 3 released. Meanwhile, the Scandizzo brothers joined Blizzard North. We're talking about Michael and Stefan Scandizzo. Michael was a network programmer on BattleNet and Diablo 2, while Stefan was a senior designer on Diablo 2 and even early Diablo 3. And it was that year that Ben Haas left Blizzard North. But this won't be the last we hear of him. Because you see, in 1999, when Blizzard released Warcraft 2 BattleNet Edition, Ben Haas formed his own company, Click Entertainment, which in its first year released Barbie Super Sports, which is actually worse than it sounds. Not only does that sound like a terrible game, it also reviewed very poorly, averaging about 1 out of 5 stars. But hey, I get it. Sometimes you gotta do things to just pay the bills. And I'm sure that Ben Haas here didn't leave the Diablo development team in the hopes of starting up a company to make Barbie games. Now, Ben Haas co-founded Click Entertainment with another former Blizzard employee named Doran Gartner, who was a senior programmer on Diablo. We just don't have an icon for him because I could not find an image of him anywhere on the internet. But Doran Gartner allegedly had been offered the opportunity to lead the development of a Diablo expansion. In the year 2000, Blizzard North released Diablo 2. But Blizzard took some significant losses. This was the year that Blizzard lost its first major players. Mike O'Brien, Jeff Strain, and Patrick Wyatt left Blizzard to form their own company. Originally called Triforge, so named because there are 3 of them. I remember this being huge headlines back in 2000. I remember people being afraid of what this meant for Blizzard's future. These were 3 key figures in Blizzard, and could Blizzard exist without them? Would Blizzard still be able to put out the same quality of games without this talent? Now you may wonder, why have we never heard of Triforge again? That's because they rapidly renamed their company to ArenaNet. Yes, these were the founding members of ArenaNet, a company which would go on to make Guild Wars, its various expansions, and Guild Wars 2. Amidst the loss of those 3 figures, Blizzard did make a hire that would become relevant in the future, and that would be Matthew Versluis. Matthew V. He's someone who worked a lot on the back end of things throughout his time at Blizzard, and would eventually become the director of BattleNet engineering. In 2001, Diablo 2 Lord of Destruction was released. And though we didn't know it at the time, this would be the last game that Blizzard North as we know it ever developed. It was at this time that Bill Roper was transferred from Blizzard to Blizzard North, eventually becoming the vice president of that Blizzard subsidiary. But in 2001, Blizzard had to deal with a dire threat. You see, there was a competing game out there, a game that was seeking to rival Diablo and take the throne of the ARPG, and that was released by Click Entertainment, Throne of Darkness, a game that was basically Diablo 2, but in feudal Japan. So how well did this Diablo killer do? Well, about a year later, Click Entertainment shut down. Ironically, an artist who worked for Click Entertainment on Throne of Darkness, Victor Lee, ended up working on Diablo 3 for Blizzard. Back at Blizzard in 2002, Blizzard released Warcraft 3 and its expansion in 2003, but it was that year, 2003, that saw the Great Exodus. In total, roughly 30 employees left Blizzard North, including some of its key figures. Its 3 founding members for one. That's Max and Eric Schaefer, as well as David Brevik. It lost the Scandizzo brothers, Stefan and Michael. And it lost Bill Roper. So why did they decide to leave Blizzard North? Well, some of them just wanted to start their own company. But for others, it was that there was conflict with Vivendi, the company that owned Blizzard at the time. It's difficult to know exactly what sparked this, but suffice to say that there was drama involved. So the 3 original founders of Blizzard North of Condor Games, the 2 Schaefer brothers and David Brevik, along with Bill Roper, now joining forces, decided to form their own studio, Flagship Studios. Meanwhile, the Scandizzo brothers formed their own company, Castaway Entertainment. It's tough to get a clear picture of exactly who went where, but in total about 9 employees, former Blizzard employees, joined Castaway, and 8 formed Flagship Studios. In 2004, Blizzard releases World of Warcraft, a hit that no one saw coming. Not even Blizzard anticipated the ridiculous success of this game. It was also this year that one of Silicon and Synapse, aka Blizzard's founding members, Alan Adam, left the company. It's possible he just stepped down and still has some affiliation with the company in a severely reduced capacity, but he's effectively non-existent anymore as a developer. On the Blizzard North side of things, Michio Okamura also left, but that was so that he can join Castaway Entertainment. It was in this year that Castaway Entertainment signed a publishing deal with EA. But it seems Michio saw something that maybe others didn't, and the next year he left the company. And ultimately, Castaway Entertainment shut down in 2008 due to financial struggles without releasing a single game. So Michio, deciding he was not going down with that sinking ship, formed his own company, Hyboreal Games. 2005 saw the official closure of Blizzard North. Some employees were let go, others were transferred from Blizzard North to Blizzard, including, thankfully, Matt Ullman. When brought over to Blizzard, Matt then helped produce music for World of Warcraft. Following the closure of Blizzard North, Eric Sexton was not transferred over to Blizzard, but he instead joined forces with Michio to form Hyboreal Games with another former Blizzard employee, Stephen Wu. You see, Michio decided to wisely evacuate from the sinking ship that was Castaway Entertainment to form his own company, which promptly shut down. Hyboreal was renamed to UI Pacific Games, but never amounted to anything. And by about 2007-2008, everyone was off doing something else. But back to 2005, along with the closure of Blizzard North, also came some losses to Blizzard itself. World of Warcraft art director William Petrus leaves Blizzard, along with World of Warcraft alums Mark Kern and Kevin Beardsley. That same year, Kevin Beardsley, along with 16 other former World of Warcraft team members, joined together to form Carbine Studios. And since its formation, Carbine would go on to bring on more talented former members of the StarCraft and Diablo 2 teams. As for the other 2 key WoW figures, in that same year they formed Red 5 Studios. All this while Guild Wars released from ArenaNet, and releasing only a year after World of Warcraft, came in direct competition with the game. The following year, 2006 came Guild Wars' first expansion, and its second came in 2007, competing with World of Warcraft's first expansion, The Burning Crusade. It was also this year that Matt Ullman's time with Blizzard had ended, and he left the company. Meanwhile, all these years, Flagship Studios, again, the original makers of Diablo, they were working on something. Something that was very hyped. And with their reputation, expectations were very high. Hellgate London. This game was meant to be a slightly different take on the action RPG formula, being playable in a first-person and third-person perspective, but it was met with mixed reviews. And because of this, the company dissolved a year later in 2008 due to financial struggles. But that wasn't before Flagship had started work on Mythos, another Diablo-style game, in fact a game much more similar to Diablo than Hellgate London was. Once Flagship Studios shut down, the entire team working on Mythos, the entire 14-person team, came together to form Runic Games. And the key personnel carried over here are the Schaefer brothers. While they had lost the rights to Mythos, which stayed with the company that ended up acquiring the assets of Flagship, they got to work on what they do best, another ARPG. At this point, things aren't looking great for Runic Games with regards to the track record of people who left from Blizzard North to form new companies. Flagship Studios, Castaway Entertainment, Hyboreal Games aka UI Pacific. Those three companies amounted to nothing and shut down, or amounted to little and shut down. Could Runic Games break the curse of Diablo? Also in 2008, Blizzard released Wrath of the Lich King, another World of Warcraft expansion, while ArenaNet lost two of its founding members. They went on to pursue their careers with different companies. Meanwhile, also in 2008, former World of Warcraft lead animator Kevin Beardsley leaves Carbine. In 2009, Matt Ullman joins Runic Games, and the company releases Torchlight, one of the better RPGs of the past decade, and the first really successful game to come out of former Blizzard North companies. Runic sets to work on Torchlight 2. In 2010, former World of Warcraft art director William Petrus leaves Red 5 Studios. This is after years of the company working away on a game. Was his departure a sign of maybe something not going super well with the game? That's to be determined. But where does he end up? Well, he rejoins Blizzard Entertainment. And he ends up as an art director on Overwatch. Oh wait, I forgot something in 2009. Alright, go back to 2009. Come on. In 2009, Jeff Strain went on to found Undead Labs. Now, up to this point, the track record for companies that left Blizzard, not Blizzard North, is looking pretty good, so Jeff's chances at success seem passable. In 2010, Patrick Wyatt, one of the Triforge people, the ArenaNet people, went on to co-found Masse Entertainment. And in 2011, Masse releases MMORPG TERA, which goes on to be quite successful. After TERA, though, Masse focuses on developing mobile games, and Patrick Wyatt leaves the company the next year. It was in this year that Kevin Beardsley joined FireForge, a new company started up by a former Blizzard employee. Tim Campbell, the Warcraft 3 expansion lead campaign designer, started up FireForge. And again, so far there have been no cataclysmic failures of companies that have branched off from Blizzard, so fingers crossed, things are still hopeful here. This would be the sixth company branching off from Blizzard, with two of those companies making successful games, Guild Wars from ArenaNet and TERA from Masse, and three companies that have existed for some time that are developing games that seem to have promise. Also in 2011, Josh Mosqueira joins the Diablo team at Blizzard. Diablo 3 has been in development for some time. Did I say why Blizzard North was shut down? In 2005, Blizzard North was finally shut down by Blizzard. This was after years working on Diablo 3, and the main reason for shutting down Blizzard North was apparently the team's poor development of Diablo 3. Blizzard took over development of Diablo 3 ever since they shut down Blizzard North in 2005, and Josh Mosqueira was brought on to lead the console version of Diablo 3. This version ended up being critically acclaimed, and when game director Jay Wilson stepped down from the Diablo 3 dev team after Diablo 3 released, Josh Mosqueira stepped in and is the man largely held responsible for successfully bringing Diablo 3 into its first expansion and really turning around the rough reputation that the game developed at launch. 2012 saw the release of 3 major titles. Diablo 3 released, Guild Wars 2 released by ArenaNet, and Torchlight 2 released from Runic Games. Torchlight 2 and Diablo 3 were direct competitors. These were both action RPGs. Torchlight 2 ended up reviewing better, but Diablo 3 was more financially successful, due in large part to the decade of hype and the stellar reputation of Diablo 2. Torchlight 2 remained a little bit more obscure, but was nonetheless a success. All 3 games were successful, received great review scores, and thankfully no more companies are shutting down. In 2013, while Blizzard is releasing its expansion to StarCraft 2, Patrick Wyatt joins Undead Labs, reuniting with his old Triforge partner. That year, Undead Labs releases State of Decay, a third-person zombie survival game which is very different from anything else that these companies have previously worked on. So far, the companies that departed Blizzard have mostly been working on MMORPGs. Again, we have Masse that released TERA, ArenaNet that released Guild Wars, and Red 5 Studios and Carbine have, respectively, been working on Firefall and Wildstar, games that would go on to release the following year. It's 2014 that Red 5 and Carbine finally release a game. These companies have existed for almost a decade without producing anything. Now, strangely, both Firefall and Wildstar are sci-fi MMORPGs, though Firefall combined in shooter elements, and Wildstar is closer to a mix of fantasy and sci-fi. Almost World of Warcraft in space.
This is not Warcraft in space!
Now, if the aesthetic of Firefall looks vaguely familiar to you, that shouldn't be surprising. Remember, William Petrus, the art lead on World of Warcraft, worked on Firefall before rejoining Blizzard to become art lead on Overwatch. Thus, the similarity in visual style between Overwatch and Firefall. Firefall, unfortunately, released to some pretty bad reviews. And for some professional investing advice, when a company spends about 10 years making a game and the game ends up sucking, that's not great for the company. Now, it's possible that the board of directors actually saw something bad coming. Maybe they didn't like that it had been years of investing into the company without getting any returns on that investment, but in 2013, Mark Kern was actually voted out of the CEO position. He stayed with the company. As you can see, he's not grayed out on my infographic, but it's not a great sign when the board of directors votes out the CEO, who was a founding member. The story of Red 5 thereafter is a tragedy. In November 2015, 40 employees were laid off. That's 40. And several more were laid off in December. Because Merry Christmas. In fact, it was a very Merry Christmas because on December 25th, right? Follow this. December 25th, many employees did not receive a paycheck. Instead, they received a letter saying that the company had no money to pay them. On fucking Christmas! And as of July 2016, the entire dev team has been laid off. The lights are out at Red 5. It is all but official in name that this studio is shutting down. Now, what about Wildstar, which is arguably Firefall's twin brother? We have 2 sci-fi MMORPGs that have been in development for about 10 years from companies started from former Blizzard employees in roughly 1 year of each other. Well, Wildstar released to positive reviews. So Carbine Studios was able to wipe some sweat off their brow, take a sigh of relief, but maybe not for very long, because it was in March 2016 that 40% of the staff was laid off. More than 70 employees, 7-0. A Chinese version of Wildstar that was in production was cancelled, and basically the game is in maintenance mode. So while Carbine Studios is not shutting down as far as we can tell, it does seem to have achieved mediocrity. The game is alive, and with a number of employees still remaining, it seems it will see continued support. But, again, with such a reduction in staff, it's unlikely that the company is working on anything new, and it's just going to maintain its revenue from this game. Now, these games had to contend with Blizzard's 2014 release, Hearthstone, another breakaway hit by the company. But this year, Blizzard did suffer a significant loss, Rob Pardo. If you'll recall, he was Blizzard's chief creative officer. In case that's not clear, he had a pretty damn big role. But Blizzard wasn't the only company to suffer a major loss. Runic Games lost one of their Schaefer brothers. Gosh, I say that in a bad way. He didn't die. No, he's okay. Eric Schaefer moved on from Runic. You see, Runic Games was founded by the two Schaefer brothers along with Travis Baldry, the creator of the game Fate. And these two decided to leave Runic and form their own company, Double Damage Games. To this day, they remain a small two-man team working on a game called Rebel Galaxy. In 2015, Heroes of the Storm released by Blizzard, Guild Wars 2 expansion released by ArenaNet, and Patrick Wyatt leaves Undead Labs. Now, Undead Labs has been doing well, seemingly. They released State of Decay, which was a success, and they're actually working on State of Decay 2, which is scheduled for launch in 2017. Now, could Patrick's departure be a sign of what is to come? Does he see the writing on the wall, and does he want to be away from what might become a mess? And speaking of messes, this takes us to 2016. Remember that company called FireForge? The one started up by former Warcraft 3 campaign designer Tim Campbell? That was also joined by the lead WoW animator Kevin Beardsley? Well, they released in 2016 the Ghostbusters video game. And apparently the movie was such a miserable, abject failure that it has tainted the name Ghostbuster to make anything published under that name now crash and burn and fail horribly. And not just crash and burn as a game, but take down everything around it. Ghostbusters released to terrible reviews. It even had some scenes ripped straight from Diablo 3. And literally 3 days after releasing this game, FireForge filed for bankruptcy. They were $12 million in debt. Oh, and Kevin Beardsley? Well, he noped right the fuck out of there. Meanwhile, on the Blizzard North front, David Brevik, aka one of the founding members of Condor, aka one of the founding members of Flagship Studios, aka one of the people who defined Diablo, started up his own tiny indie studio called Graybeard Games. I think what we're seeing is that the original Diablo devs are just kind of getting on in their years, and they want to sort of settle down, step away from the big AAA titles, and just kind of do their own thing. Brevik is working on some indie projects. We're not seeing big AAA budgets, but hey, as long as they're doing what they love, they might get back to making great games for us to enjoy. Now, Blizzard also saw some losses this year. Josh Mosqueira stepped down as game director of Diablo 3 and left Blizzard altogether. Matthew V also left, as well as Nick Carpenter. Remember him? He was the vice president of art and cinematic development. Now, everyone has always raved about Blizzard cinematics, right? I think I speak for a lot of people when I say I would love to see a feature-length Blizzard CGI film. As great as Warcraft the movie was, I want just a pure Blizzard, pure CG film. I don't want them to hire an outside studio. I don't want live action. I want a fucking 2-hour cinematic, man. But I wonder now how big of a role Nick Carpenter played in directing these cinematics and making the Blizzard cinematic what it is, what it has become known for. He's been with Blizzard from the beginning. So Josh Mosqueira, Matthew V, and Nick Carpenter joined up with Rob Pardo, who reemerged, to form Bonfire Studios. This is the recent news as of last week, and it'll be interesting to see what will emerge from this studio. Taking a step back and looking at the full picture, we see a lot of failed development companies emerging from Blizzard. We see a number of companies that spent many years working on one game that was either a mild success or not too successful at all. In 10 years from now, will Bonfire Studios be another ArenaNet, another company that successfully branched off from Blizzard, taking the Blizzard talent and creating something awesome and with longevity? Or will they just be another of the countless former Blizzard casualties? And perhaps a greater question is, what is to happen to Blizzard now? This year also marked the retirement of Chris Metzen. For those who don't know, Metzen was first hired as an animator and an artist back in '94. By Warcraft 2, though, he was helping develop story and worlds for Blizzard. The Diablo universe was created by Metzen and Bill Roper. He was the lead designer on StarCraft, and he co-wrote the story and script. He worked on the story of Diablo 2. That's something that people tend to forget. In recent years, I feel that Metzen has taken a bit of flack for some of the story directions across many of Blizzard's games, but we gotta remember that Metzen is the same guy who made the amazing stories of the past. He was the creative director on Warcraft 3 and every Blizzard game since Warcraft 3. In fact, in 2005, for his own personal projects, he developed a graphic novel series titled Soldier 76. For those who don't know, Soldier 76 would go on to become a character in Overwatch a decade later. You can argue that the entire basis for Overwatch's story came from Metzen's ideas. And if it sounds like I'm putting Metzen on a pedestal, then it's sort of because I am. And I have to admit my bias here. Growing up, I was a child in the 90s, and I remember poring through the lore books of Warcraft and StarCraft. I remember seeing the artwork. I remember seeing the name Metzen scrawled in the corner. Metzen and Didier, Samwise Didier, those were the two Blizzard artists whose concept art really resonated with me. And I tried to redraw their drawings, and there was just something about Metzen's artwork, though, that felt like it was more in my style, and I almost felt more of something of a kinship with it. And while at the time, other kids, they had posters of, like, Wayne Gretzky and Saku Koivu. I'm from Canada, so these are hockey players. You know, sports athletes, posters. These were the idols of kids in my days. But I didn't care for that stuff. The closest thing that I had to an idol, to someone that I wanted to become, was Chris Metzen. You know, I saw Metzen's journey through Blizzard. I read the credits and I saw how he gained larger and larger roles and started to get more involved in the creative aspects of the story and all that. And I felt this very much mirrored my interests. You know, I enjoyed drawing as a kid, but I also really enjoyed storytelling, and I would go on to want to become a writer. And honestly, the very reason that I got into the video game industry so many years ago, starting with video game journalism, was because I wanted to get my foot in the door to become a writer for video game stories. I wanted to become Chris Metzen. So when I read the headline that he was retiring from Blizzard, it hit me like a truck, and I was just dazed. I couldn't even really reconcile the notion of Blizzard existing without Chris Metzen. And with that news coming so soon after the news of Bonfire Studios starting up, I thought maybe he would be joining that. But if you read his full retirement speech, if you will, I guess you can't help but read something written by Metzen in Metzen's voice. He says that he's retiring to spend time with his family, so it doesn't seem like he'll be joining up Bonfire or doing anything really other than focusing on family right now. And that was the one bit of solace, I guess, seeing, you know, because as sad as it was, as earth-shattering as it was for me to see that Metzen was retiring from Blizzard, that's possibly the best possible reason for someone to do something. It's kind of difficult to imagine BlizzCon going forward without Chris Metzen, without him coming out with his booming voice.
What up, BlizzCon?
And I do hope he comes to BlizzCon 2016. It would really suck if he's not going to be at BlizzCon 2016. But I digress. Blizzard won't be the same company without Chris Metzen, so it'll be interesting to see how Blizzard games evolve into the future without his influence. And that ends our story here. Lots of talent has left Blizzard over the years. Lots of talent from Blizzard has tried to start up new companies. Some have been successful, some haven't. But what do you guys think of all this? Do you think Bonfire Studios will be successful? Do you think any of the other companies started up by former Blizzard employees will shut down? Do you think we'll see any smash hits from David Brevik or Double Damage Games? These little indie studios started by the original creators of Diablo. With all the talent that Blizzard has lost over the years, do you think it'll still exist as a titan in the industry in another 10 years from now? Or do you feel that the key people at Blizzard have done a good enough job at perpetuating their talent and hiring the right people and ensuring the continued success of the company? That wraps up this video. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch supporters and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. A quick reminder that you guys have until September 30th to get your name on the t-shirt. Check out these other videos and subscribe to join Rhykkers Raiders to stay informed of Blizzard news. At BlizzCon 2016, Blizzard will reveal Diablo 4. Now, at the heart of this conspiracy is this simple 4-sided die. Let's get real up close on that and bring it into focus here. This little innocuous trinket